When looking at fan favourite stories of the Fifth Doctor era, Kinder is always one of them that appears on quite a lot of lists. This is a story that at the time was the lowest rated of the season, primarily because of the complex themes and the subtle storytelling. But after getting a sequel in the story of Snake Dance, and being re-evaluated, it started to become an extremely iconic story for this Doctor. This is also a story that has a couple strange things about it. Like, for instance, this is the only story of the Fifth Doctor era where we don't see the interior of the TARDIS. And that when this story came out in DVD in the box set called Mara Tales with Snake Dance in 2011, it was given updated special effects for Part 4, and I will explain why at the end. This story was released in 4 parts, from the 1st of February 1982 to the 9th of February 1982. It was written by Christopher Bailey, who wrote this and Snake Dance, mainly using Buddhist concepts and themes throughout the story. It was also directed by Peter Grimraid, produced by John Nathan Turner, and the script editor was Eric Saywood. Jumping swiftly into episode 1, there is quite a lot of things that needs to be discussed. So the TARDIS team have arrived on the planet Diva Loca, or S14 to the Galactic Federation, and it is currently being investigated by a group of humans, checking if it is good to colonize. Now, if you watched the previous story, Fort Doomsday, then you would know that that story ended with a cliffhanger of Nyssa fainting in the TARDIS. And, if you were wondering what happened, then you're out of luck, because a major issue of this story emerges, which is that it doesn't really explain some important plot points, including what has happened to Nyssa. It can be assumed that a mix of being hypnotized by the Urbankans and a faulty helmet was the reason why she passed out, but in this story, Nyssa only appears at the very beginning and at the very end, where she rests in the TARDIS and recovers. This means that the Doctor builds a Delta Wave Augmenter, which is some random gadget that can help her, but the important thing is that the sonic screwdriver is a main component of it, meaning that he doesn't have it in this story, which I do think is foreshadowing its destruction in the next story, The Visitation. Now, looking at the behind the scenes over Nyssa, for some reason, actress Sarah Sutton was given a contract with 24 out of 26 episodes of the season, so they wrote her out for pretty much all of this one. So the Doctor, Tegan and Adric explore the forests of Diva Loca, and I will say that out of all the forest sets in Doctor Who, this is unfortunately a quite forgettable one. And for a paradise planet, it just looks like some random forest in Brazil, which is quite a shame for an alien planet. Eventually, the three of them come across these wind chimes, which makes Tegan quite sleepy, so the Doctor and Adric move on. As Tegan falls asleep under the chimes, strange things start to happen to her, but we'll get to her a bit later. Then, the two travellers come across this Total Survival Suit, or TSS for short. And this prop is definitely one that could look much better. If there was a larger budget on this serial, it would be a bigger improvement. So, they accidentally activate it, where it comes alive and escorts them to the dome. Now, I will say the dome set is pretty cool, as it's supposed to be something that was made up really quickly. So, at the base, we have our 3 supporting characters, with Commander Sanders, Second-in-Command Hindle, and Scientist Dr. Todd. And they arrive as a group of 6, where 2 other members, and another one called Roberts, mysteriously disappears, which is so mysterious that we actually never find out what happens to them. My theory is that they saw the box of Jhana and went crazy in the jungles and died, but I'll get to that soon. I will say, this opening scene with the Doctor meeting these guys is a little bit funny to me.
Look, I was right. 2 arms, binocular, bipedal, human or humanoid at the very least. I'm delighted to meet you.
Stay where you are.
Intentions unknown, hypothesis unfriendly, as K9 would say.
Where's Roberts?
Roberts? Was Roberts...
Answer the question!
I'll be very pleased to. It's a little difficult to concentrate. Thank you.
Well?
Well, I'm afraid we can't help you. The thing was empty when we came across it.
What are you doing on S14?
S14?
Diva Loca, land of the Kinder.
The Kinder are the native life form.
Yes.
Who built the chimes?
Yes.
Well,
Could you repeat the question?
So we find out that the Kinder are the native beings in this planet, and we learn they understand high mathematical concepts, but they are non-verbal and communicate telepathically. Also, the humans have a couple of hostages to experiment on, for some reason. And here is where we get to learn a little bit of our good friend Hindle. So let's just say Hindle isn't the most mentally stable person in the world. What makes him different than other crazy Doctor Who characters is that he isn't shown to be silly, but rather more frightening, which makes him a lot more unpredictable. But I will say he is still a little bit silly. So Sanders requests that he goes explores the outside in the TSS, and while this happens, Hindle uses the time to use a mirror to hypnotize the Kinder as hostages, by trapping their souls. By the way, we don't find out that he trapped their souls until part 4. So the episode 1 cliffhanger is that he and the other Kinder arrest the Doctor, Adric and Todd. So with episode 2, we start off with 2 new characters, being the blind wise woman, Panna, and her acolyte, Karuna. So these 2 are Kinder, but they can speak, and this begins the theme of the power of women in this serial. Now, it isn't in your face, but it is pretty obvious that women are at the top of the hierarchy, and how men are shown to be idiotic and filled with anger. This can be shown when we meet Aris, a male Kinder whose brother is one of the hostages, and he is quite upset and angry at the humans, and we find this out because Karuna can speak his thoughts. But anyways, later Sanders shows up and Karuna gives him the box of Jhana, which has these psychic powers that starts to affect Sanders out of the wilderness. Now let's rewind back to Tegan, who enters this dimension in her dream, being the dark place of the inside with these amazing visuals. Now what happens is a bit confusing, and quite a lot of it isn't explained until, you guessed it, part 4. So under the chimes is where the Kinder do their dreaming ritual, where they share their minds with each other, but it is forbidden to be under the chimes alone, as a dark evil lives there, which is where Tegan is. So, she meets this old couple playing, I think, checkers, and they tell her that she doesn't exist, and they also have these snake markings on their arms. This is where we meet Dukkha, who is sort of the spokesperson in this dimension. Now, Dukkha also has this marking on his arm, and it is revealed that he is the embodiment of the Mara, the amalgamation of evil for the Kinder, shown in this snake body. Dukkha also has a Buddhist meaning, as Dukkha is the term of suffering, which is a concept that Buddhists are trying to avoid. I will say, for his short screen time, Dukkha has a real presence in this serial, which is lost in the other serials with evil characters. He seems to enjoy being evil with no motivation besides taking another body. He works well as this figure who represents all evil. He then starts stuffing around with Tegan's mind, primarily by creating duplicates of her to convince her to let him take over her own physical body. After a while, she requests to be left alone, and the both of them turn into nothingness until she begs for him to stop and submits to his demands, and this scene happens.
Then hold out your hand.
After this, Tegan is now possessed and now evil, which can be shown as her mouth is red/pink, which I believe is supposed to look like the inside of a snake's mouth. But anyway, she has lost her Australian accent and she has the snake marking on her arm. Eventually she finds Aris, where she throws apples at him, and she reads his mind and finds out that he is unhappy at the humans, and is the perfect victim to be possessed. So the Mara travels from Tegan and possesses Aris's body. For quite an iconic part of the serial, Tegan is only possessed for a very short time, and I do wish that she got more to do, as she just collapses again and doesn't wake up until part 4. Rewinding back to our main characters, in this very tiny jail cell, the Dr. Adric and Todd are squished inside, where Adric plays this magic game with the Doctor, involving a coin.
Go on, choose.
Well, logically, that one. That's rather clever, Adric, don't you think so? You have unexpected talents.
Again.
Well, now, logic would dictate that one, but wait. No, I'll try and second guess you. That one. That one, then. That one. Where, then?
Nowhere. Vanished.
No, quite impossible. That would be in direct contradiction to the laws of the material universe.
Then where?
Well, that one. That one. Ah, yes, of course. Can I try? Yeah.
I do find this quite funny, but it confuses me that the Doctor, who is around 800 years old, has never come across this trick before, and this makes the Fifth Doctor look quite stupid. However, I will say, the repeated use of this trick later on is very clever and does work to narratively push the story forward. So anyway, after a while, we get a typical Adric moment, where he sides with the villain, and he joins Hindle. But unlike Ford of Doomsday, Adric is actually not on Hindle's side, and he just wants to break the Doctor and Todd out of prison. He does this by doing the coin trick, but he quickly drops the key to the cell into the Doctor's hand, but Hindle sees this and throws him back into the cell. I will say, I do like how this subverts the audience's expectations, as having Adric siding with the bad guys for 2 stories in a row, 3 if you count him being kidnapped by the Master in Castrovalva, is quite repetitive and weakens his character. Then, Sanders miraculously returns to the dome, and he has the box of Jhana with him. Another thing that is notable is that he is more juvenile and less strict, meaning that the psychic power of the box has affected his personality and psychology. He wants Hindle to open the box, but he refuses and forces the Doctor and Todd to open it up in the prison cell, for an iconic episode 2 cliffhanger with Todd screaming. The next episode shows the full scene, which is...
Open it! Or I'll have you shot!
Don't, it could kill us!
Unfortunately, so could Hindle.
Now this is quite anticlimactic for a resolution of a cliffhanger, but eventually the psychic force kicks in as the power fades, and the Doctor and Todd see a vision of Panna and Karuna, and they escape before Hindle catches them. This is, I believe, in good time to really talk about Todd, because she is the companion surrogate of this episode for the Doctor, even though he has 3 other main companions. But in all seriousness, she is a delight. She is competent and feels like the 80s version of Liz Shaw, both being doctors who can be on the same wavelength as the Doctor. But anyways, the duo meet the Kinder, and the Doctor performs a coin trick to gain the trust with the Jester, but then Aris shows up, and since he can now talk with the Mara's power, he declares that he is the prophesized one. However, Karuna shows up and lures the Doctor and Todd away. They meet up with Panna, where she is surprised that the Doctor is there, as the box of Jhana only works on females, who are the superior sex in Devaloka. She says that the only reason why the Doctor is here is because he has to be an idiot, which actually makes sense knowing that he seems more dumb in this story, but it is probably because he's a Time Lord. Then Aris and the rest of the Kinder arrive outside the cave, where they are able to convince Karuna to join them in their quest to destroy the humans. Once they leave, Panna enters a trance and shows the two this abstract vision of the Mara, and how it will destroy everything at 12 o'clock, and this is apparently set both in the past and the future, as the Mara represents the endless cycle of evil emerging for the Kinder. But at the end of the trance, Todd confirms that Panna is dead for the cliffhanger. Now part 4 opens with Karuna gaining Panna's spirit, which makes her the new wise woman, and she returns to the duo, where there's a lot of exposition dumping, which I've already explained, primarily on the origin of the Mara and how it got into Tegan. So the 3 find Tegan under the chimes, and awaken her, to which we learn that she's been asleep for 2 days, and that she can't really remember anything. But it doesn't really matter, as the Kinder are fighting the TSS outside the dome. But the TSS scares the Kinder away, leaving Aris stuck in this strange box thing. We learn that inside the TSS is Adric, and since it is controlled mentally, the Doctor has to calm down Adric, so that he can control himself. While this happens, Aris escapes. Now Adric, for the whole last episode, has just been trying to escape from Hindle, but he keeps getting caught, but he reveals that Hindle has set up explosives around the dome, so that he can blow it up, keeping the evil out and trapping him and Sanders in, which is sort of the reverse effect of Genesis of the Daleks, if you think about it. When the Doctor and Todd return to the dome, they see that Hindle has built this makeshift capital city out of cardboard boxes, with little cardboard men around. After trying to surprise everyone, he is ready to blow up the outside of the dome, but everyone distracts him, mainly by making him explain what he has built, and this is where we learn how he's controlling the Kinder. Then, this iconic scene happens.
What do you think, sir?
Yeah,
Careful!
I'm so sorry.
It's easily mended, a drop of glue.
Don't be silly! You can't mend people, can you? You can't mend people! Go on! Press the button! No!
This is easily the most memorable crash out and his scariest, as this little world for him is the only bit of sanity left and his acting is top notch. Then Todd is able to grab the box of Jana, where she convinces him to open it up, which he does and it affects him greatly. Now we don't see him until the end of the story, but we learn that the box of Jana fixes insanity. The thing I wish the story explained a bit better is how he became insane, as the only reason is that he started to go crazy because of the ever-growing presence of the Mara, but I kind of wish that he physically encountered it, then went bonkers, but that is a criticism that I'll explain at the end. We also learn out of the blue that since Hindle controlled the Kinder with a mirror, that means the Mara can be controlled, and apparently the Mara can't face its own reflection, so that is how the Doctor's going to stop it. So by using solar generator panels, the Doctor has the Kinder step in this circle where they can trap Aris in, and when they do, this starts to happen with him.
Hold the mirror straight! What's happening? The Mara is detaching itself. What? It's leaving Aris. It has no further use for him. Now, put in fear! Hold your ground! Keep it in the circle! Close the gaps! The circle must be kept closed. If the circle is closed, the Mara cannot escape. It's fantastic! Where does it draw its energy from? It's incredible!
Now, there's a couple things to mention here. The first is that there's an obvious gap in the bottom corner of the circle, but that is there for the camera to dolly in and out. The second thing is that the special effect isn't many people's favourite. Personally, I think the snake looks rather cool for the budget, but I don't really care that it looks like plastic, because most monsters in the show look like they're made of plastic. I will say the updated special effect for part 4 makes the Mara look much better as it is in CGI. My problem is when the camera cuts back to the main cast and it looks a bit off as the CG looks so more modern than the rest of the episode. For many, this is the best CGI replacement for any classic story, and I absolutely agree. This snake looks so cool. It is just, I think the original snake didn't look that bad, and I think the money and effort should go on towards a story with worse effects. But back to the plot, the Mara eventually dies after being stuck in the mirrors, and Tegan is strongly affected when looking at it, and she asks if it is gone, and I do like how the Doctor doesn't reply, subtly hinting that it is still out there in Tegan's mind, foreshadowing Snake Dance in the next season. So the story ends with the Mara defeated, and the Kinder are happy with the Doctor's help, and Sanders and Hindle have recovered, and Todd comes to the conclusion that Devaloka is unsafe for colonization, protecting the Kinder from any other humans. We also see Nyssa has fully recovered as they travel off. Now, Kinder is unfortunately a story that I dislike more on this rewatch, having the complete opposite effect to Fort of Doomsday. Now, I'm not saying it is bad, as it is far from it, but I don't resonate that much with this story. The subtle themes work quite a lot, but my main issue is that there are so many unanswered questions, and they're not either addressed until part 4, or they're not even answered. The mystery of Roberts and the 2 other surveyors, Hindle's craziness, and Amara's weakness to mirrors aren't really addressed earlier in the story, and I do wish that this wasn't overlooked as much. Out of the 3 companions, one of them is not even in the story, and the other 2 just don't do enough. Yes, Tegan has an iconic storyline of her being possessed, but she is only evil for a couple of minutes, and then she is asleep and does nothing for the rest of the serial. Adric does a little bit more, as he exists as the B-plot in part 3, just to see what Hindle is doing. The Doctor himself is also a bit dull, as he doesn't even know what he is doing the majority of the story. But I will say the supporting characters do carry it, as Panna and Todd have this amazing iconic presence, and Sanders' change from strict to childish is neat, but the highlight has to be Hindle, as he is possibly the most memorable thing, besides the Mara possessing Tegan, about this story. Hell, even Dukkha is insanely cool, despite only being inside of Tegan's head. I will say this is much better than Castrovalva, which to me is still 2 random stories that need development needed, and they don't need to be smushed together. But Forward to Doomsday just has this fun and cool idea which makes it more likable for me. So, that is why I am giving Kinda a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching.